1998 was a midterm election year, and in that midterm election in 1998, voters in Washington state got the chance to vote for a rise in the minimum wage. It passed. It not only passed, that rise in the minimum wage got more votes than any other thing or any other person on the ballot that year. Democratic Senator Patty Murray that year got reelected by 16 points. But the minimum wage got 150,000 more votes than she did. It was wildly popular. In 2004, in Florida, constitutional amendment on the ballot that year to raise the minimum wage in that state passed with 71% of the vote. 71%. Its margin of victory was 42 points. That was Florida in 2004. In 2006, it happened all over the place. Minimum wage increases passed in 6 states: Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Missouri, Ohio. In Colorado, the margin of victory was 6 points. In Ohio, it was 14 points. In Arizona, it won by 30 points. In Nevada, it won by almost 40 points. This is the kind of margin that rises in the minimum wage pass by when you ask people to vote on them. In Montana, in 2004, the minimum wage increase passed by a 45-point margin. It got almost 75% of the vote. You know, because Montana's so liberal, just like Missouri is. Bunch of commies out there, right? In Missouri, the margin was even bigger than Montana that year. The minimum wage increase passed in Missouri by a 52-point margin. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. The minimum wage initiative passed in red state Missouri by 52 points. And in those states that were voting on raises in the minimum wage that year, woe be unto the anti-minimum wage Republicans who were running against Democratic candidates who were on the winning side of that issue. That year was the year we elected now familiar Senate faces like Ohio's Sherrod Brown, where he took the side of the minimum wage increase that won by 14 points. Also Jon Tester, where he took the side of the minimum wage increase that won by 45 points. Claire McCaskill, who was on the winning side of that 52-point spread in Missouri and who never let her Republican opponent squirm away from that fact for 1 minute.
Tell Missourians, yes or no, how will you vote on the minimum wage proposal that will be on the ballot that you will be voting on in 3 weeks? Yes or no?
You're going to have to cast a vote in 2 weeks on whether or not we raise the minimum wage in Missouri. Will you vote yes or will you vote no?
I have not taken a position on the minimum wage ballot issue.
Not taking a position. Maybe you didn't, sir, but voters in your state certainly did. And Claire McCaskill beat you. Claire McCaskill squeaked by with one of the most unlikely victories in the '06 election. She unseated a Republican incumbent senator, in part because of the incredible popularity of the minimum wage increase with which she shared the ballot in Missouri that year. It was after that performance in the '06 elections that then-President George W. Bush finally signed into law a federal increase in the minimum wage. Last one we've had. The opposition to raising the minimum wage is always the same argument. It has been since the beginning of time. It's going to kill jobs, right? It's going to reduce unemployment. It's going to reduce employment. It's going to raise unemployment. Look back in 1938, President Roosevelt signing the federal minimum wage into law for the first time, the summer of '38. Wasn't even above the fold. But the objection was the same then as it is now. It's going to kill jobs. It's the same objection we hear today.
I wish we could just pass a law saying everybody should make more money without any adverse consequences. The problem is, you know, costing jobs from those who are just trying to get entry-level jobs.
I've been dealing with the minimum wage issue for the last 28 years that I've been elected with. And when you raise the price of employment, guess what happens? You get less of it.
That has been the argument since the dawn of time. You can't have a minimum wage. You certainly can't raise the minimum wage because that will mean employers will hire fewer people. Unemployment will go up. You will cost people their jobs. It's always the same argument. But here's the thing. We can check to see if that argument works. Because we've done this before a zillion times. At various times, we have both established a minimum wage and raised the minimum wage in states like Florida and Colorado and Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Missouri, Ohio, Alaska, Kansas, just about anywhere else in the country. And when it happens federally, we can compare before and after. And when it happens between states, we can compare what happens. This isn't a hypothetical question. We can look at the cause and effect of these policies. This is empirical. This is knowable. And here's what we know. Raising the minimum wage basically has little to no effect on the amount of low-wage employment. It is true. It's an empirical thing. You can check it, and people do. One major study, the famous one done in the mid-90s, right after minimum wage increases in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, this is considered to be the gold standard in this field of empirical research, resulted in this. The results seem to contradict the standard prediction that a rise in the minimum wage will reduce unemployment. Another big study done about 10 years later found the same thing. The dotted line on this chart is employment growth. In other words, adding new jobs in states where the minimum wage was above the federal level. In other words, states where they had increased the minimum wage. You see the relationship between those two? See how it's keeping up with all the other states? Right, exactly. And last week, the Center for Economic and Policy Research published what was essentially a study of studies, a meta-analysis of the body of work that is out there, studies of the connection between minimum wage increases and employment. What did that meta-analysis find? Well, there's a clue in the title. They titled their conclusions, "Why does the minimum wage have no discernible effect on employment?" Raising the minimum wage doesn't hurt jobs. It basically does not have the effect of costing jobs, period. It's checkable. And if you check that, that is what you will find. So just in case we want to make policy based on data, there is data. And just in case we don't want to make policy based on data, and instead we want to make policy just based on politics, well, it turns out that people really, really like the idea of raising the minimum wage. A lot. A new poll by the Pew Research Center and USA Today that's out today finds that support for President Obama's proposal to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $9 an hour, support for that idea stands at 71%. Nothing is that popular in our country, but this is. Barney Frank joins us next.